The Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, is a Paris-based global body that looks at countries' compliance in money laundering and terror financing, among other things. The FATF was on the case of Pakistan this month, but there is a lot of smoke screening happening as to what exactly happened. Whether Pakistan was punished for its record on money laundering and terror financing or not is still the question. Reza, what exactly is the process of FATF to name countries and take action against countries, and what exactly happened in its meeting this month?
The FATF has a pretty long and complicated procedure before it puts a country on a grey list. This procedure involves something called a mutual evaluation, which means the FATF works with the country in question over a period of almost 18 months, assesses its ability to counter terror financing and money laundering, assesses its laws on these issues, and then after this study, which lasts almost 18 months, if it finds that there are deficiencies, that country is put on something that's called a grey list. And an action plan is also drawn up by the FATF and the country concerned to, on the steps that the country will take to emerge from the grey list. What happened this time in Paris was something different. The US and its allies, the UK, Germany and France, pursued a new course where a decision was taken after a vote to put Pakistan on the grey list, even without having the mutual assessment. So what happens is Pakistan will be given time till June to frame an action plan on the steps it will take to counter terror financing and money laundering. And then at the meeting in June, Pakistan will be placed on the grey list.
Perhaps the most interesting and dramatic turnaround in this particular discussion on Pakistan was the position taken by China. China has a lot running in terms of its own investments, which it wants to secure in Pakistan against terror strikes and terror activities. And India seems to have done a lot of behind-the-scene maneuvers to get China on board. But what exactly do you think made China change its position?
Under the FATF's procedures, if 3 members oppose a motion or a resolution, it cannot be taken up for discussion. And what happened was, when Pakistan's case came up for preliminary discussions, Turkey, China and the Gulf Cooperation Council, whose vote was being wielded by Saudi Arabia, they all blocked the US motion to take up Pakistan's case. And so this issue ran into problems. But then the US made another concerted move and brought the motion up again for another vote. And there was a lot of very interesting, as you said, background discussions and behind the scenes deal making that was done. And this led to, the vote finally going through. One, Saudi Arabia for a long time has been wanting to become a full member of FATF, but it has not been able to do so because of concerns over its own efforts to counter terror financing. So now there is a possibility that Saudi Arabia will become a full member in June this year. So the Saudis were reminded of their commitments, what they needed to do on terror financing. In the case of China, China was given the vice presidency of FATF. And it's interesting because the vice president of FATF automatically becomes the president for the next session.
So India may have won a diplomatic victory in this case, and it is very interesting that when China got the vice presidency of FATF, 2 things happened. Indian External Affairs Ministry spokesperson actually tweeted a congratulatory message. How many times do we see that? And then around this time, the Foreign Secretary of India was visiting Beijing also. So these are interesting aspects. But what exactly is China's stake in ensuring that Pakistan acts on terrorism?
Well, as you mentioned, China has a lot of investments in Pakistan, especially the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is billions of dollars. And they have been at pains to ensure that it will be safe, secure, it will not be, in any way hampered by terrorist activities. China also has its own concerns about its Uyghur terrorists being trained in Pakistani territory, in the Pakistani tribal areas, and this is something they brought up several times. There was also a very interesting report in the Dawn, I think yesterday, which mentioned something very interesting, which was that the Chinese side had told the Pakistanis that they could no longer, I mean the message sent out was they could no longer continue defending them on a motion that was bound to fail. Which is sort of a reflection that even Beijing now understands that Islamabad needs to start taking care of its terror problem. That it's not really in China's interest to always prop up Pakistan on the issue of terrorism, because the world community is now turning around and asking China, hey, guys, what are you doing? I mean, you are backing somebody who has been using terrorism as an instrument of state policy.
The thing that is most interesting for India, and this is my last question to you, is the terror organizations of the Mumbai terror attack mastermind Hafiz Saeed, which are going to be affected by any action that Pakistan will take as far as FATF is concerned. So at the same time, Hafiz Saeed is going around town saying that America is trying to fight us because we are doing the work of the Pakistani people, and of course we are upholding the Kashmiri cause, etc. Do you think that Hafiz Saeed is going to be in the near future sort of curtail his activities, or any action being taken? Do you see any action being taken?
I frankly find that I think that's not something that's going to happen. I mean, this is a man who was blamed for the Mumbai attacks. Virtually nothing was done about him. I mean, he was put under house arrest for a few months. That's been Pakistan's standard operating procedure. Whenever there is some pressure from the world community on Hafiz Saeed, they put him under house arrest. Mind you, house arrest, not even proper detention. And he's held for a few months, and then he takes his matter to the courts, and the courts say, do you have any evidence against this guy? And the government comes and says, well, we don't have any evidence. Now, the only thing that has changed now is that Pakistan has amended its own laws through an ordinance to ensure that anyone that is sanctioned by the UN Security Council is also banned in Pakistan. But now this is an ordinance. It's going to last for a few months. If this is not converted into a proper law in Parliament, I frankly don't see how action is going to be taken against Hafiz Saeed and his groups. There have been some reports of some seminaries and some dispensaries and some ambulance services being taken over by the government, but that really leaves his fundraising and his recruitment infrastructure still intact. So the JUD and /LET still have the capability to mount further terror attacks. They can fundraise, they can recruit. So I think this is going to need sustained pressure from the international community. Besides the grey listing in June, a sustained message has to keep going out to Islamabad that, guys, look, you can't keep on using terrorism as an instrument of state policy.
We will have to wait till June to see whether the international community through FATF punishes Pakistan for money laundering and terror financing. But one thing is very clear: Pakistan has been put on notice. No amount of stonewalling is going to clean up Pakistan's act if it doesn't take sincere efforts to curtail terrorism. That will be in the interest, above all, of ordinary Pakistanis, and it would be in the interest of India to see a prosperous Pakistan, a stable Pakistan, which also acts on its own terror groups.